I've collected 160 amazing historical photos that you definitely missed. Write in the comments, which photo did you like the most and why? In 1997, Julia Butterfly Hill climbed a 1,000-year-old redwood named Luna to stop loggers from destroying it. She lived on a tiny platform high above the ground for 738 days until the lumber company agreed to protect the tree. Alessandro Moreschi was the last known castrato and the only one whose voice was ever recorded. As a boy, he was castrated to preserve his high singing voice, leaving behind haunting recordings from the early 1900s. A burning Japanese Mitsubishi. A 6M0 falls near Palau in July 1944 after being hit by American fire. The Zero was fast and deadly, but its light construction and poorly protected fuel tanks could turn a single accurate burst into a fatal blaze. In 1919, this couple lived in the cellar of their ruined home in Lens after surviving 30 months under German occupation. Repatriated through Switzerland in 1917, they later returned to the devastation and planned to remain underground indefinitely. After Princess Diana died on August 31, 1997, mourners covered the gates of Kensington Palace with flowers, letters, and personal gifts. The tributes became so vast that royal gardeners had to clear paths through them before her funeral. On August 3, 1936, 22-year-old Jesse Owens won the Olympic 100-meter final in Berlin in just 10.3 seconds. It was the first of 4 gold medals he claimed at those games, crushing Nazi claims of racial superiority. Princess Angeline, the daughter of Chief Seattle, refused to leave when Seattle expelled most Native people in 1865. She survived by washing clothes and selling shellfish, living alone in a waterfront shack near the city, named after her father. In 1961, a New York couple modeled transparent fallout suits designed to shield them from radioactive dust after a nuclear attack. Their emergency life pack held only 8 days of supplies, revealing how Cold War survival was marketed to ordinary families. This 1935 mugshot shows Anna Pauker after Romanian police shot her in both legs during her arrest. 12 years later, she became the world's first female foreign minister and one of Communist Romania's most powerful leaders. A traffic officer from East Germany's Volkspolizei applies lipstick during a quiet moment in Leipzig in 1966. The rare candid photograph reveals an ordinary human side of the uniformed force that policed the communist state until its collapse. In 1936, South African wrestler Jacobus van den, known as the Tattoo Man, demonstrated a brutal hold in London. He later claimed he had smuggled guns for Al Capone and served time in Sing Sing prison. Alan Bean wore this checklist on the moon during Apollo 12, unaware that backup astronauts had slipped Playboy images and jokes between its pages. The lunar artifact sold for $400,000 in 2026, far above its high estimate of $240,000. This watch was recovered from the ruins of Hiroshima, its hands frozen at 8:15 in the morning. That was the exact minute the atomic bomb exploded above the city on August 6, 1945. Jane Birkin posed for Vogue in 1966, the same year she appeared in the controversial film Blow Up. She later became a fashion icon and inspired the Hermès Birkin bag. In 1968, 13-year-old Bill Gates and 15-year-old Paul Allen used their school's teletype terminal to access a PDP-10 computer at the University of Washington. Their teenage obsession with coding eventually led them to create Microsoft. Leonardo DiCaprio shares a meal with his maternal grandmother, Helene Indenburken, who was born Yelena Smirnova in the Russian Empire. He called her Oma and brought her to the German premiere of The Aviator in 2005. In 1899, Nikola Tesla looks out from his Colorado Springs laboratory beside a warning sign reading, "Great danger, keep out." Inside, his enormous electrical coil produced artificial lightning bolts, millions of volts strong, sometimes cutting power across the city. Thousands of fascist black shirts packed Rome's Colosseum in 1926 to hear dictator Benito Mussolini. The rally marked 4 years since the March on Rome, which had forced the king to appoint Mussolini prime minister and opened the path to dictatorship. On October 24, 1964, rail fans packed a special trip honoring New York's low-V subway cars after their final passenger run. The farewell sign turned the retired train's last journey into an unforgettable goodbye. Italian and German soldiers raised their hands after being surrounded by American troops in Tunisia in 1943. Their capture came during the final collapse of Axis forces in North Africa, where nearly 250,000 enemy troops eventually surrendered. In 1905, Geronimo posed for this portrait nearly 20 years after his final surrender. The legendary Apache leader remained a prisoner of war until his death in 1909. In 1972, 42-year-old Jack Lynch from Dublin attempted to drink 20 pints, or 11 liters, of Guinness in one sitting. This photograph captures the astonishing challenge, but no reliable record confirms that he finished it or earned an official Guinness World Record. This Kodachrome slide from 1946 challenges the idea that women's fashion was always conservative. Two friends pose with their dog in practical summer shorts and a revealing halter top, styles already popular for leisure and outdoor life. This photo shows the Montparnasse derailment in Paris on October 22, 1895. Running late, the train entered too fast, overran the tracks, smashed through the station wall, and crashed into the street below, killing a woman outside. On August 3, 1976, Jerry Litton won Missouri's Democratic primary for the United States Senate. That same night, his plane crashed while taking him to his victory party, killing Litton, his wife, their 2 children, and both pilots. George and Willie Muse, brothers with albinism, were kidnapped as children and forced to perform in sideshows for 18 years. Their mother finally found them, and after regaining control of their careers, they bought a home and lived surrounded by family. French cycling star André Leduc grabs coffee during the Tour de France, pouring it straight into his bottle beside the road. He won the race twice and survived countless crashes, including one where he broke his bicycle but still fought back to win. After the Berlin Wall split the city in 1961, West Berlin parents lifted their babies above the barrier. Their children's grandparents watched from East Berlin, unable to cross and hold them. At 17, Mexican performer Lucia Zarate weighed only 4.7 pounds because of an extremely rare form of dwarfism. Famous for her wit and custom-made dresses, she toured the United States and England while always trying to be the best-dressed person in the room. Emperor Franz Joseph I poses as a hunter inside Schönbrunn Palace in 1910. A lifelong hunter, he reportedly killed more than 50,000 animals and carefully recorded each one. A Soviet soldier examines an Italian L-6/40 light tank flipped upside down by an explosion in 1942. Built for reconnaissance with only 2 crewmen and thin armor, this small tank was dangerously vulnerable on the Eastern Front. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then known as Lou Alcindor, graduates from UCLA in 1969. He left with a history degree, 3 national basketball titles, and only 2 losses in 3 varsity seasons. 17 years before the Green March, Sahrawi tribal leaders renewed their oath of allegiance to Morocco's King Mohammed V at Mamid El Ghizlane in 1958. In 1975, the International Court of Justice confirmed that ties of allegiance had existed between Morocco's Sultan and some Western Sahara tribes before Spanish colonization. On October 19, 1989, British negotiator Sir Crispin Tickell and Argentine envoy Lucio Garcia del Solar shook hands after a breakthrough agreement. The deal began restoring relations severed during the Falklands War and let both countries cooperate without settling the dispute over the islands. During World War II, Rita Hayworth regularly volunteered at the Hollywood Canteen, where she served food, worked in the kitchen, and danced with servicemen. The legendary actress was among many stars who entertained troops there without pay. Between 1975 and 1979, the Khmer Rouge turned this Phnom Penh high school into Tuol Sleng Prison, where more than 18,000 people were photographed and catalogued. Most were tortured into false confessions before being murdered, many at the Choang Ek killing fields. Built in 1896, Meteor was a whaleback ship designed to carry huge loads of grain and iron ore through shallow Great Lakes ports. Its rounded hull nearly vanished when fully loaded, leaving only a smooth metal back above the water. In December 1991, Tim Berners-Lee demonstrated the World Wide Web on a NeXT computer to delegates at the Hypertext Conference in Texas. The technology shown in this crowded room would soon transform how billions of people share information. In 1927, Belgian communist youth posed inside the Ipatiev house cellar where the Romanov family had been executed 9 years earlier. The room was later demolished with the entire house in 1977. Cambodians searched through wreckage after Operation Menu, the secret United States bombing campaign that struck Cambodia from 1969 to 1970. The attacks weakened the neutral government and helped Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge gain support in devastated rural areas. Abraham Lincoln met General George McClellan at Antietam in October 1862, weeks after the bloodiest single-day battle in American history. Frustrated that McClellan had failed to pursue Robert E. Lee, Lincoln removed him from command 1 month later. John Saxon faced Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon and performed many of his own fight scenes despite having no formal martial arts training. Remembering the Hollywood veteran whose 6-decade career included more than 200 film and television roles. Anne Chambers photographed these children climbing a lamplighter's ladder in London in 1948. The ladder offered them a rare view above the city's high walls, turning an ordinary street into a temporary lookout. Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, and director Sam Raimi filmed this rooftop scene for Spider-Man in 2001. The movie reached theaters in 2002 and became the first film ever to earn more than $100 million in its opening weekend. Confederate General Martin Greene reportedly said, "A bullet has not yet been made that can kill me," during the siege of Vicksburg in 1863. Moments later, a Union sharpshooter shot him in the head. Leticia Cardeño wears a traditional Filipino terno from around the late 1930s or early 1940s. Its dramatic butterfly sleeves became a powerful symbol of Filipino identity and remain the gown's most recognizable feature. Frances Marion was Hollywood's most sought-after screenwriter from 1915 through the late 1930s, earning $3,000 a week and writing more than 130 produced films. She became the first writer to win 2 Academy Awards and built lasting partnerships with Mary Pickford, Irving Thalberg, and William Randolph Hearst. This pedal-powered ambulance carried patients on a stretcher inside its narrow cabin, while one medic cycled them to safety. It was built for places where cars were too expensive or could not reach. This woman was photographed in Libya in 1983 and identified as one of Muammar Gaddafi's female bodyguards. His all-female security unit later became famous worldwide, but former members gave disturbing accounts of abuse behind its carefully staged image. Marilyn Monroe married playwright Arthur Miller in 1956 after converting to Judaism. Their marriage shocked Hollywood, but ended 5 years later during the troubled filming of The Misfits. In 1927, New York's first female barber broke into a profession controlled entirely by men. This rare photograph captures her cutting a customer's hair while challenging one of the era's strictest workplace barriers. In 1885, Gottlieb Daimler built the Reitwagen, widely known as the world's first motorcycle powered by an internal combustion engine. Its wooden frame, iron-banded wheels, and 2 small stabilizing wheels made this historic machine look like a motorized carriage. Acrobat Louisita Lears was photographed around 1929, displaying the powerful physique that made her famous. She stunned circus crowds by hanging from one arm high above the ground and performing strength moves few men could match. These are the real toys that inspired Winnie the Pooh, given to Christopher Robin Milne beginning in 1921. They now live at the New York Public Library, but Roo vanished decades ago and was never found. A tattooed Yakuza member poses with a sword on a Tokyo rooftop in the 1970s. Japanese photographer Seiji Kurata captured the criminal underworld using a blinding flash at dangerously close range. In 1966, 19-year-old Jane Birkin appeared in Vogue, the same year her nude scene in Blow Up caused a scandal. 3 years later, her song with Serge Gainsbourg was banned by the BBC and became an international hit. Jane Fonda raised her fist for this mugshot after her 1970 arrest at Cleveland Airport. Police suspected drug smuggling, but the pills were only vitamins, and every charge was later dismissed. In 1942, Groucho Marx looked almost unrecognizable without his famous painted mustache, thick eyebrows, and cigar. Actress Arlene Whelan poured him a drink during the train ride, capturing the comedian in a surprisingly ordinary moment. On the set of You Were Never Lovelier, Rita Hayworth shares a rare moment with her father, dancer Eduardo Cancino, and her cousin Carmina. Eduardo had been Rita's childhood dance partner before Hollywood transformed Margarita Cancino into one of its biggest stars. Taken near Garnett, Kansas in 1884, this is the earliest known photograph of a tornado. Photographer A. Adams captured the funnel from about 14 miles away before it tore through the countryside, destroying homes and killing one person. During severe flooding in 1930s London, rescuers used horse-drawn carts to reach families trapped inside their homes. Residents climbed through upstairs windows because the flooded streets made their front doors impossible to use. This 1933 photo shows Benjamin, the last known Tasmanian tiger, pacing inside Hobart Zoo. 3 years later, Benjamin died after being locked outside overnight, and the species was declared extinct. Clark Gable and his wife, Rhea Langham, arrive at Grand Central Terminal in New York on March 2, 1934. Within weeks, Gable would star in It Happened One Night, the film that won him his only Academy Award. Oscar-winning movie star Jimmy Stewart flew 20 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe instead of accepting a safe publicity role. On May 19, 1945, France awarded him the Croix de Guerre with palm for his exceptional service in the country's liberation. A Moscow family watches Ronald Reagan's New Year message to the Soviet people in 1988. In a rare Cold War exchange, Mikhail Gorbachev also addressed Americans on television. In 1986, Diego Maradona secretly punched the ball past England goalkeeper Peter Shilton, and the referee awarded the goal. Maradona later called it the hand of God, while Argentina won the match and eventually became world champions. In London in 1926, a Scottish soldier steals a glance as 5 women show off fashionable shoes and patterned stockings. His kilt makes the contrast even funnier. Both sides are displaying bold legwear. Russian prima ballerina Anna Pavlova tries the camera while filming The Dumb Girl of Portici in 1916. Her only major film role was Fenella, a mute heroine whose rebellion against Spanish rule sparks a violent uprising in Naples. Around 1900, an orca hunted beside a whaling boat in Thurumbullurur Bay. Local killer whales helped whalers find and trap larger whales, then claimed the lips and tongues as their reward. A farmer and his sons fight through a dust storm in Cimarron County, Oklahoma, in April 1936. Years of drought and damaged soil turned the Great Plains into the Dust Bowl, destroying farms and forcing thousands of families to flee. This rare 1885 photograph shows Robert Louis Stevenson, author of Treasure Island and Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Despite severe lung illness that often left him confined to bed, he produced some of the most thrilling and disturbing fiction of his time. For decades, the boy on the left was believed to be 13-year-old Vincent van Gogh. Experts later identified him as his brother Theo, leaving the photograph taken when Vincent was 19 as the only confirmed image of the famous artist. In 1891, children of Italian immigrants saluted the American flag at a New York industrial school on Mott Street. Photographer Jacob Riis captured how schools pushed immigrant children to adopt American customs, language, and loyalty. In 1904, a Japanese shell tore through one of the finest restaurants in Port Arthur during the siege. Diners still sit among shattered walls and debris, revealing how suddenly the Russo-Japanese War reached civilian life. This 1908 photograph from Zanzibar shows chained captives years after slavery was officially abolished there. Despite the ban, illegal slave trading and forced labor continued in secret across East Africa. In late summer 1913, firewood sellers crowded the corner of the Fontanka River and Izmailovsky Avenue, possibly within sight of composer Sergei Prokofiev's home above the Izmailovsky Pharmacy. The second photograph captures the exact same spot 110 years later. Alexander Bloch's half-sister Angelina cared for wounded soldiers in hospitals during the First World War. She caught typhus from her patients but kept working until she collapsed, dying on February 20, 1918. In 1918, London children climbed over captured German artillery displayed on the Mall, including a massive 21-centimeter Mörser 16. The weapon could fire a shell weighing more than 100 kilograms, turning a deadly battlefield machine into an extraordinary playground. A student at Petrograd's Workers' and Peasants' University completes his homework in 1919. The university opened higher education to ordinary workers after the Russian Revolution, when many students studied despite hunger, cold, and civil war. Finland's Swedish-speaking minority descends largely from settlers who arrived when Finland belonged to Sweden from the 12th to 18th centuries. This 1920 farmhouse shows their traditional life with a masonry stove, curtain bed, rough wooden furniture, and an elderly woman beside the hearth. In 1924, a truck crashed through a Washington courtyard and exposed hundreds of meters of secret tunnels. Smithsonian entomologist Harrison Dyer admitted digging them alone at night, complete with electric lights, tiled walls, and German newspapers that sparked rumors of spies. In 1924, workers gathered outside Krasilnikov's private shoe shop at 24 Sretenka Street in Moscow during a strike, photographed by Arkady Shaiket. The scene exposed a sharp contradiction of the new economic policy when private businesses returned inside the Soviet state. During the Spanish Civil War, Franco's soldiers turned a captured Soviet T-26 tank into an altar for a Catholic Mass. The Soviet Union sent 297 of these tanks to the Republic, but Franco's forces captured, repaired, and reused many of them. Bayume Mohammed Hussein, a former soldier from Tanzania, moved to Berlin in 1929, acted in films, and taught Swahili. After repeatedly being denied a veteran's badge, he wore one illegally, then was arrested for a relationship with a white woman and died in Sachsenhausen concentration camp in 1944. A Red Army soldier escorts Boris Churilov, the German-appointed mayor of Velikiye Luki, after his capture in December 1942. Churilov denied persecuting civilians and blamed his subordinates and German commanders, but a Soviet court sentenced him to death in July 1943. This is the Japanese battleship Issei, sunk in shallow water at Kure after repeated American airstrikes in July 1945. Once rebuilt as a strange battleship and aircraft carrier hybrid, it was razed after the war and completely scrapped by 1947. Marilyn Monroe adopted her stage name in 1946 when 20-year-old Norma Jean signed her first contract with 20th Century Fox. Earl Moran took these photos in 1947, 9 years before she legally changed her name to Marilyn Monroe. In 1955, Oxford student Francesca Ricketts stunned audiences by swallowing swords during popular college shows. Her twin sister Julieta, who did not share this dangerous talent, watches her perform at Somerville College. In Nashville in 1957, segregationists claimed that communists were using school integration to destroy America. That year, black first graders entered previously all-white schools, and racist opponents answered with protests, threats, and a school bombing. After the Second World War, the four Cascio brothers raised money by selling a ring that let smokers hold cigarettes down to the last precious millimeters. In 1957, they unveiled the 140-kilogram Casio 14A, the world's first compact all-electric calculator with a 10-key number pad and a single display. In 1959, Robert Diamant photographed three women choosing tea sets behind a crowded shop window in Moscow. Polka dot cups, porcelain teapots, price tags, and decorative figurines reveal the astonishing variety available to Soviet shoppers. In 1965, Japanese sumo wrestlers performed to packed crowds at the Moscow Circus, led by Taiho Koki, a legendary champion born on Sakhalin to a Russian father. This rare photo shows Soviet women in the rain beside the original sumo poster just before the historic shows. Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris rest during the filming of Way of the Dragon in 1972. Their famous Coliseum fight was filmed on a studio set in Hong Kong, and Norris later revealed that Lee gained weight for the scene to look bigger beside him. An armed guard watches over a major conference of Afghanistan's ruling People's Democratic Party in Kabul on June 1, 1985. Vladimir Vyatkin's striking photograph later won second prize in the Daily Life category at World Press Photo. On August 23, 1989, about 2 million people formed a human chain stretching nearly 670 kilometers across Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Known as the Baltic Way, the protest marked 50 years since the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and demanded freedom from Soviet rule. In November 1899, the Russian battleship General Admiral Apraksin struck rocks near Hogland Island, tearing a 27-square-meter hole in its hull. The icebreaker Yermak freed it in April 1900, while Alexander Popov's wireless telegraph was used in a naval rescue operation for the first time. Inside the GM Peck factory in St. Petersburg in 1912, machinists worked in tight rows beneath a maze of ventilation pipes. Karl Bulla captured each workstation with its own extractor, designed to pull dangerous metal dust and shavings away from the workers. On April 8, 1916, exhausted soldiers of the French 68th Infantry Division rested after returning from Fort Vaux during the Battle of Verdun. Behind them, trucks crowded the Sacred Way, carrying troops and ammunition toward Verdun and bringing wounded men back non-stop. Moscow's Kuznetsky. Most in 1918, where a huge snowbank rises beneath the sign of the Jemgarov brothers' banking house. Just 25 days before the October Revolution, the famous bankers and philanthropists sold everything, closed their business, and fled Russia with their fortune. Moscow criminal investigators posed beside an armed police motorcycle in the 1930s when mobile machine guns helped officers chase violent gangs. A similar motorcycle was later demanded by poet Ivan Bezdomny in The Master and Margarita. This shocking scene from the 1933 musical Flying Down to Rio shows dancers performing on the wings of an airplane above the city. The movie made Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers a famous dance pair, although they were not the main stars. A drill operator works deep inside Norilsk Mine No. 3 in 1944. Its nickel, copper, and cobalt were vital for Soviet weapons, aircraft, and armored vehicles during the war. Soviet soldiers raised the red banner over the shattered quadriga of Berlin's Brandenburg Gate on May 1, 1945. Photographer Semyon Fridliand captured the victory symbol above a city where fighting had not yet fully ended. This dizzying photo by Robert Diamant shows the Soviet dead loop ride in the early 1960s. A two-seat airplane spun around a horizontal axis, powered by an engine in its nose and balanced by a counterweight at the opposite end. In the 1940s, Manhattan rose behind Goldwater Memorial Hospital on Welfare Island, now Roosevelt Island. The hospital opened in 1939 for patients with chronic illnesses on an island previously dominated by prisons, poorhouses, and mental asylums. This leather glove carried a map of London to guide fashionable visitors to the Great Exhibition in Hyde Park in 1851. Streets and famous landmarks were printed directly on the glove, turning an elegant accessory into a pocket map worn on the hand. On April 24, 1872, Mount Vesuvius sent lava through San Sebastiano and Massa, killing 25 people. Scientist Luigi Palmieri stayed inside the Vesuvius Observatory while lava surrounded it, using a seismograph to record warning signs of the eruption. This is the Russian battleship Oriole, scarred by Japanese shells during the Battle of Tsushima in 1905. After sailing 18,000 miles from the Baltic, the damaged warship surrendered and entered the Japanese fleet under a new name, Iwami. Germany, 1917. A warning sign reading "Danger of Death" marks an unexploded large-caliber shell lodged beside a tree. One wrong touch could have triggered the damaged fuse, turning this quiet forest path into a deadly trap. In December 1940, Mrs. Richard Carter ran a Massachusetts farm with 1,000 chickens while her husband drove a bulldozer at a nearby army camp. Alone, she carried water through freezing weather and collected, cleaned, and sorted every egg by hand. Smoke fills the ruins of Thiaucourt, France, after American troops drove out German forces during the Saint-Mihiel offensive in September 1918. The town had been under German occupation for 4 years, and the battle left its streets buried beneath shattered homes and rubble. This captured British Mark IV fought for Germany in 1918, still bearing its Black Cross markings. An internal ammunition explosion tore the armored hull apart, leaving the tank split open beside the road. In December 1941, German soldiers wrote a chilling message on this shell: "Another 1,000 shots at Moscow." The inscription captured Nazi confidence just as the Soviet counteroffensive was driving German forces away from the capital. This photograph shows the graves of German soldiers in Smolensk in October 1942. Beneath the second cross from the left lies Sergeant Major Jürgen Ledspor of Kempen, who was badly wounded in a bombing on September 9th and died in a Smolensk military hospital on September 29th. On August 24, 1942, a Japanese bomb exploded on the flight deck of USS Enterprise during the Battle of the Eastern Solomons. 3 direct hits killed 74 crewmen and wounded 95, but the badly damaged carrier still reached Pearl Harbor under its own power. A sharecropper picks cotton near Chapel Hill, North Carolina in September 1939. Landowners often took half the harvest, while high-interest debts for food and supplies kept many families trapped on the same land for years. In 1943, someone wrote on the wall of a ruined house in Voronezh, "Nata, Marussia, Nura, I am here and looking for you." The message gave an address, Chernyshevskaya Street, House 18, and the name Malandina, hoping the missing women would find it. On July 14, 1944, the American B-17 Flying Fortress Mizpah lost its entire nose to anti-aircraft fire over Budapest. 2 crewmen died, while the other 8 parachuted from the shattered bomber and were captured. A direct bomb hit tore this German Sturmgeschütz 3 assault gun apart in the village of Kiseliki. The wreck was photographed in Belarus during the massive Soviet offensive of June and July 1944. 20 minutes after the atomic bomb struck Hiroshima, Toshio Fukada photographed the rising cloud from just 2.7 kilometers away. He captured 4 haunting images of the bombing, creating one of the closest visual records of the nuclear attack. A newly built ZIS-110 limousine passes through an automatic wash at Moscow's Stalin factory in 1947, photographed by life photographer Thomas McAvoy. Reserved for top Soviet officials, the armored luxury car was closely modeled on the American Packard Super 8. Surtsey rose from the sea on November 14, 1963, after an underwater volcano erupted near Iceland. By 1967, it covered 2.7 square kilometers, but relentless erosion later reduced it to nearly half that size. In 1965, American aircraft dropped napalm on a village south of Saigon, turning fields and homes into a burning target. This jellied fuel stuck to almost anything and burned slowly at temperatures reaching 1,100 degrees Celsius. On November 8, 1975, a catalytic cracking unit exploded at an oil refinery in Beek, the Netherlands, killing 14 people and injuring 109. The blast destroyed much of the plant, while the resulting fire burned for 5 days. On October 4, 1993, Russian tanks shelled Moscow's White House, setting the parliament building ablaze during a violent constitutional crisis. The confrontation between President Boris Yeltsin and Parliament left at least 158 people dead and 423 injured. Russia abolished flogging for ordinary soldiers and sailors in 1904, but restored it as military discipline during the First World War. This rare photograph shows a Russian Imperial Army soldier being prepared for punishment with birch rods in a rear unit in 1916. Before turn signals, drivers had to show every move by hand, as this mechanic demonstrates in San Francisco in 1920. Flashing electric indicators were patented in 1925, yet some cars were still sold without them until the early 1950s. In 1923, Bashkir children in the Ural Mountains played a homemade game resembling bandy, using crooked branches as sticks. With no factory equipment, they likely struck a pine cone or piece of wood across the snow. In 1923, African employees of the African Oil Nuts Company and Miller Brothers were arranged as living Christmas advertising in Badagry, Nigeria. Letters painted across their bodies spell Merry Xmas, while British company staff sit in front of them. In 1943, women at the Zlatoust metallurgical plant operated massive hot stamping presses to shape artillery shell casings for the Soviet front. Their work kept ammunition production moving while millions of men were fighting in the war. On September 8, 1944, British bow fighters attacked the Italian ocean liner Rex as the Germans moved it toward Trieste to block the harbor. The ship burned for 4 days, rolled onto its side, and sank just 100 meters from shore in today's Koper Bay, Slovenia. A Soviet soldier dances the polka with a German girl in Berlin in 1945, just after the Nazi capital fell. Their smiling faces capture a rare moment of celebration between former enemies amid the ruins of Europe's deadliest war. A widow and her children visit the grave of their husband and father in the German Empire during the 1870s. Photographer G. Hirsch captured their private grief at a time when mourning clothes and cemetery portraits helped families preserve the memory of the dead. In 1883, railway crews crossed the flooded Pripyat Valley on temporary tracks, working from wooden platforms, boats, and directly in the water. These military-built lines conquered the vast Polisi marshes and created a vital route for troops, timber, grain, and growing cities. Built in Britain in 1891, the steel bark Cromdale struck the Lizard in thick fog while carrying nitrates from Chile. Everyone survived, but Atlantic waves destroyed the entire ship within a week. Inside a French Saint-Chamond heavy tank, 8 men fought in a deafening steel compartment protected by just 17 millimeters of armor. Built in 1917, this 400 machine giant carried a 75 millimeter cannon and 4 machine guns, but its long body often became trapped in trenches. These Finnish Juhlapuki performers were photographed in 1920, wearing fur coats, masks, and long beards. Their name means Christmas goat, a reminder that Finland's gift-bringer began as a frightening goat-like visitor before becoming the friendly Santa known today. A father and his eldest son returned from a shift in a coal mine in the Rhondda Valley, South Wales, on June 22, 1931. Still covered in coal dust, they posed with 2 young children, revealing the human cost of Britain's coal industry. They made it, a Soviet soldier and his sweetheart, stand on the shattered roof of the Reichstag in 1945. Behind them, central Berlin lies in ruins after one of the bloodiest battles of the war. In New York in 1947, an artist ties a safety rope around a model posing high above the street for a billboard painting. The striking scene was photographed by Stanley Kubrick before he became a legendary film director. Japanese carpenters shape a massive timber with curved hand adzes in 1899 during the Meiji era. Each controlled strike removes a thin layer of wood, creating a flat beam without electric tools or modern machinery. This Bedouin warrior was photographed on the Arabian Peninsula in 1906, carrying a curved sword and wearing a colorfully dyed robe. Warriors like him guarded valuable caravans and fought rival tribes during raids for livestock, supplies, and control of desert routes. On April 23, 1918, 1,700 British sailors attacked Zeebrugge while 3 concrete-filled cruisers tried to block its canal. The raid cost Britain 214 dead, but German submarines were using the passage again within days. This 1967 photograph shows a crowded Palestinian refugee camp near Damascus, where families lived in tightly packed tents. The camp was run by the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, created to provide Palestinian refugees with shelter, education, health care, and protection. On October 8, 1871, fierce winds turned a barn fire into the Great Chicago Fire, carrying burning debris across the river. About 300 people died, more than 17,000 buildings were destroyed, and 100,000 residents lost their homes. 8 French soldiers hide a massive 370mm railway howitzer under camouflage at Noyon, France, on September 5, 1917. Photographer Paul Castelnau captured the giant weapon, which needed railway tracks to move and fired shells weighing hundreds of kilograms. Captain Ushakov's scouts crossed the shattered bank of the Dnieper in Smolensk on September 25, 1943. That same day, Soviet troops liberated the city after more than 2 years of German occupation. On September 11, 1973, Chilean President Salvador Allende refused to surrender as troops stormed La Moneda Palace. He died by suicide with a rifle gifted by Fidel Castro, and these photographs show his final hours and firefighters carrying his covered body from the ruins. On March 31, 1990, up to 200,000 people marched through London against Margaret Thatcher's hated poll tax. Fighting erupted near Trafalgar Square as mounted police charged the crowd, protesters broke through barricades, and central London descended into the worst riots the city had seen in years. During the Great Flood of Paris in 1910, the Seine rose more than 8 meters above its normal level. Streets became canals, forcing Parisians to travel by boat while thousands fled flooded homes. On March 18, 1967, the Torrey Canyon struck a reef and spilled about 120,000 tons of crude oil, killing roughly 200,000 birds. 11 days later, Britain bombed the wreck with over 1,000 bombs, napalm, and rockets to burn the remaining oil. Write in the comments, which photo did you like the most and why?